Winter night. Snow falls thick in front of the porch. Red and green lights flicker. The fireplace glows. On the screen, a chubby old man with rosy cheeks and a white beard laughs loud and hearty, shaking as if nothing in this world is worth worrying about. But behind that smile, what is there really? Is he an ancient saint who once saved poor girls from being sold into slavery? Or is he the giant symbol of modern consumerism? Is he the magic of childhood, or a collective lie that all adults silently maintain? How did a thin bishop from faraway Asia Minor become the old man in a red suit flying over the skies of New York, London, Paris? And more importantly, why did almost all of humanity agree to believe in that myth, even if only for a few weeks at the end of the year? That is the story we're going to walk through tonight, from Saint Nicholas to Santa Claus, from cold stone churches to glowing shopping malls, from charity to overflowing branded gift baskets, the birth of a modern legend. If you close your eyes and think of Santa, a very clear picture probably appears. An old man with a big belly in a red suit trimmed with white, a wide leather belt, a pointed red hat, a huge sack of gifts over his shoulder. He walks through thick snow, leaving boot prints on rooftops, slipping through chimneys, placing presents under the tree, and vanishing in the sound of jingling bells. It's almost cinematic, almost Hollywood. But thousands of years ago, there was no Christmas tree, no reindeer, no chimneys, and definitely no Black Friday. There was only the deep blue Mediterranean, creaking wooden ships, and a silent bishop walking through the dark, dropping small bags of gold through the windows of poor families so they wouldn't have to sell their daughters. They called him Nicholas, Bishop of Myra. Saint Nicholas, in Christian tradition, is not someone born out of northern snow and ice. He lived in the 3rd century in Myra, a port city in Asia Minor, today's Turkey. At that time, the Roman Empire still smelled strongly of steel and soldiers. Persecution of Christians still happened, and daily life for common people was unstable and harsh. Nicholas was born into a well-off family, but lost his parents at a young age. Instead of keeping his inheritance, he chose to distribute it to the poor, quietly helping the desperate. In old stories, Nicholas appears at night, carrying small bags of gold, tossing them through windows of girls who had no dowry, saving them from being sold off. He becomes the symbol of anonymous generosity, a hand extended in the darkness without asking for thanks. It's stories like these that planted the seed of the secret gift giver the world would later call Santa Claus. But at first, Nicholas wasn't a jolly, round old man. He was a solemn saint in bishop's robes, holding a shepherd's staff and wearing a mitre on his head. His image appeared in churches, icons, and the prayers of sailors, merchants, and children. He was honored as the patron saint of sailors, the poor, and the young. Miracle stories about him, calming storms, saving people from execution, made Nicholas one of the most beloved saints of the Middle Ages. Before there was Santa Claus, there was Nicholas, a symbol of Christian compassion, remembered not for his big belly, but for his wide heart. When Nicholas died, the story didn't end. His tomb became a place of pilgrimage, and his relics were later brought to Bari in Italy, helping spread his veneration across Europe. The feast of Saint Nicholas on December 6th became a special day for children in many regions. On the night before, kids would put their shoes outside the door, hoping to find small gifts, fruit, or simple toys in the morning. Sometimes, next to the gift, there would be a small switch or twig, a reminder that children are not always well behaved. Here we begin to see a familiar pattern, a supernatural figure traveling in the winter night, bringing gifts to the good and symbolic punishment for the naughty. This is the skeleton of the Santa myth, but at this stage, the main character is still Saint Nicholas the Bishop, not the red and white old man with flying reindeer. At the same time, in medieval Europe, winter was not just a festive season, it was a time of fear. Long cold nights when death quietly visited poor homes without enough firewood or food. In folk imagination, winter belonged to wandering spirits, ghostly hunters, wild hunts in the sky, demons lurking under trees. In that context, Nicholas became a small flame in the darkness, a figure who was partly religious, but also directly touched the daily worries of families. When you live in an era where harsh winter can wipe out your household, the idea of a kind figure silently bringing food and money to your door feels like a miracle. Nicholas wasn't just a saint. He was a promise that even in the blackest night, kindness still existed. But European history doesn't stand still. When the Protestant Reformation exploded in the 16th century, many regions reduced or rejected the veneration of saints. The feast of Nicholas was restricted or transformed. In some places, the gift-bringer became the Christ child himself, under the figure of Christkindl, an angelic child bringing presents. Elsewhere, Nicholas didn't disappear, he evolved. In Dutch culture, he became Sinterklaas, still a bishop, still on a white horse, but now riding over rooftops, carrying a book of children's names, arriving by ship from a faraway land like Spain. He was accompanied by helpers, whose portrayal later became controversial. However you interpret it, the core remains: a supernatural gift-bringer tied to children's behavior, appearing in winter. The legend keeps changing its clothes, like a river changes its course, but the water still comes from the same spring. Meanwhile, in England, another character steps into the winter stage: Father Christmas. He is not Nicholas, and not strictly a children's gift giver. Father Christmas embodies the spirit of feasts, revelry, wine, and tables laden with food. This old man with a beard, in long robes, sometimes green, sometimes red, stands for warmth, joy, and plenty in the cold. He is almost the human form of Christmas itself, more than a delivery man for presents. If you put together England's Father Christmas, Holland's Sinterklaas, Mediterranean Nicholas, and other local winter traditions, you start to see the sketch of a new figure, a kind old man tied to winter, to celebration, to gifts, to shared meals. All the pieces are ready. They just need a place to be mixed into one complete myth. And that place is the New World, America. When the Dutch migrated to North America, they brought Sinterklaas with them. The name, passing through English mouths, slowly warped into Santa Claus. In 19th century New York, writers like Washington, Irving, and the author of the famous Christmas Eve poem started to redesign Santa. Instead of a solemn bishop, Santa became shorter, jolly, almost like a mischievous forest sprite. He no longer rode a horse, but a sleigh pulled by flying reindeer. He slid down chimneys, carried a sack of toys, and laughed loudly through the night. Crucially, he now came not on December 6th, Nicholas Feast, but on the night of December 24th, fused tightly to Christmas. The legend was domesticated. Instead of a church saint, Santa became a guest in the living room, standing by the fireplace and the tree, at the heart of family life. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, illustrators, especially Thomas Nast, continued sculpting Santa's image in newspapers and magazines. Each drawing added a detail. One day, he lives at the North Pole in a toy workshop. Another day, he has a long list of children's names, checking it twice. Later, little elf helpers appear, working year-round. The sleigh now has not one, but 8 reindeer, each with a name. The legend is world-built. Santa gets an address, a workplace, a workflow, almost like a supernatural company. You can write to him, imagine where he is and what he's doing. He's no longer just a religious symbol. He's a fully fleshed-out character in popular culture, in stories, poems, illustrations, songs, and plays. Then in the 20th century, the train of commerce arrived and dragged Santa onto a new level. People often say a soda company created the red-suited Santa, but that's only half true. He'd been drawn in red, green, and brown before that. However, big Christmas ad campaigns, especially posters of a plump, cheerful red-suited Santa, froze this version as the global standard. From then on, the red and white, friendly, jolly Santa became the face of the winter shopping season. He didn't just appear in churches or cards anymore, but on billboards, TV commercials, and in department stores. The image had made a full circle, from church to supermarket, from quiet charity to massive marketing. At this point, the story shifts from lore to decoding. Why did a religious symbol become the mascot of retail? Because Santa, under that red coat, is perfect for both roles. He's a selfless gift giver and a convenient excuse to buy. For children, Santa is magic. For adults, he's a legitimate reason to spend. It's not me buying, it's Santa bringing this for the kids. In an industrial society where the economy needs seasonal peaks in consumption, Christmas with Santa becomes the perfect machine. Emotion, family, tradition, and shopping woven into one. You can be cynical, but it's hard to escape when the carols start playing, the lights go on, and the excitement in children's eyes melts all your theories. But Santa is more than a pretty wrapper for consumerism. Look deeper, and you'll see he carries many of the modern world's contradictions on his shoulders. On one hand, Santa stands for unconditional generosity, giving without asking. On the other, he runs on a strict logic. The nice get presents, the naughty don't. Santa's good and bad list is how adults use myth to shape children's behavior. Behind the smile is a system of reward and consequence. Under the tree's glow lies a harsh question. If a poor child in a chaotic household receives fewer gifts, is it because they were less good? Seen through a sociological lens, Santa is a mirror of inequality. The same myth, completely different experiences across classes. Some children think Santa forgot them, when in fact it's the adult world that did. For parents, Santa is a delicate equation. Should they tell their kids about him to preserve the magic of childhood, or tell the truth to teach them about reality? In the first years of life, Santa is the bridge between dream and real. The child writes a wish list, tries to behave, and lies awake, waiting for some soft sound in the night. That feeling, many adults remember clearly as a warm memory. But then, one day, the child finds out. Some feel hurt, some laugh, some feel a little betrayed. Yet many of those same children later do the exact same thing for their own kids. They become Santa in the dark. Maybe what we're really passing down is not the story of a man flying through the sky, but a ritual of complicity to preserve something beautiful, even when we know it's not literally true. If you place Santa in the wider gallery of winter myths, he looks very different from older figures. In some traditions, there are ghostly hunters and terrifying spirits. In others, monsters that snatch misbehaving children or stern gods who bring snowstorms. Winter, in ancient imagination, often belonged to fear and punishment. Santa Claus is a deliberate rewrite, replacing fear with joy, punishment with gifts, darkness with the glow of a fireplace. Yet he doesn't completely cut ties with the past. The idea of grading children and handing out consequences echoes old beliefs. It's just that instead of being dragged off by demons, you lose a gift. The modern world softened the penalties, but kept the moral mechanism. Santa is a new way to tell an old story. Actions have consequences, but we say it now in the language of candy and wrapping paper. As the myth spread worldwide, Santa constantly adapted. In Japan, Korea, and countries without Christian traditions, Santa still appears, not as a religious saint, but as a festive symbol. He sits in malls, takes photos, stands beside plastic trees. In some places, he walks alongside local characters, blending into native folklore. Elsewhere, he's seen as an imported Western product tied to consumer culture. For many people, Santa is simple fun, decorations, parties, an excuse to celebrate. For others, he's a sign of globalization, crowding out traditional myths. Love him or hate him, he's hard to ignore. Every December, images, music, and ornaments call his name again. It's fascinating to realize that under all these layers, saint, bishop, folk figure, brand mascot, movie icon, a thin thread still leads back to that man in Myra. Nicholas had no idea what Black Friday was, no understanding of advertising, and no way to imagine that his quiet acts in the night would form the foundation of a global legend. But the spirit of giving in secret, of lifting up the vulnerable, of taking on hardship so others can sleep easier, that spirit is what keeps this figure from disappearing. No matter how many commercial layers cover him, Santa lives on because beneath it all, people still want to believe that someone, even if imaginary, stands on the side of the small and powerless. And that is probably the real reason Santa Claus became a modern legend. In a world filled with stories of conflict, corruption, and injustice, where we are surrounded by bad news, the fact that humanity still chooses to tell itself a story about a kindly old man who returns every year with gifts for children may seem naive, but it's deeply necessary. Myths are not there for us to believe literally. They're there to remind us who we want to be. When a father stays up late wrapping gifts, when a mother hides a toy behind the tree, they aren't just playing Santa. They're reminding themselves that no matter how exhausting life gets, they can still create a moment of magic for someone else. In the end, from Saint Nicholas to Santa Claus, we don't just see the journey of one character, we see our own. From small religious communities to a global industrial society, from strict church feasts to flashy shopping seasons, from quiet bags of gold left in the dark to gifts unboxed live on camera for millions to watch. The myth changes shape, but the need behind it barely does. The need to give, to receive, to believe that something good survives in the night. The question is not whether Santa is real. The question is, what do we choose to do with this myth? Use it as an excuse to spend, or as a reminder that even in the world's winter, we can be the ones who light a small lamp for someone else. And maybe the most beautiful part is this: whether you believe or not, whether you roll your eyes whenever you hear Christmas bells, once a year you still get pulled into that strange feeling. A bit of nostalgia, a bit of excitement, a quiet hope that something unusual might knock on your door. That's the power of a modern myth. It doesn't have to be Greek gods or dragons. Sometimes it's just a chubby old man laughing, hauling a sack of gifts through the snow. In a world full of calculation and self-interest, the fact that we still make room for him in our imagination might already be a small miracle.